Wait, is that bad in the front just giving a thumbs up? What? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Marvel lore deep dive. Today, we're going to be checking out the Vampires of Marvel, which has been a suggestion that I've seen thrown around. We've gotten a ton of suggestions, actually, on a previous video.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're all leading in many different directions. We'll likely get to them eventually. Right now, I suppose we're just going based on our interest for the day. And because it's the holiday season, Christmas is nearby, we felt like, you know, vampires, Christmas, yeah, that's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
So here we are.
I agree.
I don't know what this is going to cover. We did see Moon Knight on the thumbnail, however, telling, I guess, Dracula to give him back his money. That was a little bit of tidbit of lore that I learned from Marvel Rivals, actually, when we were playing that basically daily. I believe we talked about it a little bit. But yeah, that's about it. Of course, before we get into the reaction, however, please make sure to go support Sir Superhero. Link at the very top of the description, like always.
Superheroes versus vampires. Marvel has gone all in on this little subgenre lately, especially with the current Marvel Rivals season being Empire of Eternal Night. Is it cool to see characters like the Fantastic Four and Iron Man fighting vampires? Oh, absolutely. But is this like a regular thing? Sure, Blade has been dealing with them for quite a while, but in the original comics, is Dracula really that big of a villain? Do vampires really darken the entire sky? Does Dracula also really owe Moon Knight money? The answers might surprise you, so let's talk about it. We're gonna begin.
I'm assuming that wasn't actually edited, because Moon Knight is kind of unhinged. He would call Dracula a big fucking nerd, wouldn't he?
It is an edit, but it is very funny.
In this video with a simple history of vampirism in Marvel. I had a plan on how exactly I was going to do this when I sat down to record this video, and that plan literally instantaneously went off the rails. It all starts with this ugly looking guy. His name is Varney, and he is the oldest vampire to ever exist. No, Dracula does not hold that title, we'll get to him later. I'd heard of Varney long before I started researching to present this vampire stuff to you.
I immediately said Varney's name wrong. Rather than re-record this clip though, I'm just gonna take this chance to admit that I don't actually know the right way to say it. I want Varney, but it could be Varney. I couldn't find a solid answer. I've heard people say both. Oh well, there you go. And people were bad, and I'm like, Zero, it's symbiote, not symbiote. It's like, oh, brother. I don't know, I've heard it said both ways. I believe the correct way is symbiote, but I don't know. I get the two mixed up constantly.
I've been a Spider-Man fan my entire life, and I couldn't tell you. So,
regardless, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Guys, I've read several comics that he's in, and I was fully prepared to begin with some real-world lore, like folklore and mythology stuff. But Varney just kind of doesn't have any of that. He is a 100% original Marvel creation. Even the name is just a slight modification of a character from an 1800s gothic Penny Dreadful story. I'm not going to argue with this, because if anything, it actually makes my life a lot easier, but to get it out of the way now, if you're wondering what the folklore base for the origin of Marvel's vampires is, the answer, apparently, is not applicable. Now, with that established, let's actually begin the comics lore stuff, where we will go even more off the rails, because we're starting in Atlantis, of all places.
What?
If it helps make a little bit more sense, which it may or may not, we are talking about very old Atlantis here, like pre-cataclysmic Atlantis before it sank underwater. Back in old Atlantis, there was a cult.
You know, this is kind of funny because we did learn about Atlantis, except in a future video from Sir Superhero, which we did previously, which was the Ghost Rider video, I believe. And the whole origins there and tying that into the entire world flooding. That was pretty neat. Didn't go into any details about Atlantis, though. Just saw the exact same panel I showed here.
Led by a sorcerer named Thulsa Doom. No relation to Victor Von Doom, at least as far as we know. This cult would frequently go up against a nearby nation named Volusia, and vampirism was something they discovered in one of their plots against this enemy. The keyword there is discovered. Humanity did not invent vampirism, they simply found an ancient spell of necromancy which could revive a corpse with enhanced power. We're gonna do some audience participation here. You get exactly one guess as to where this spell was located. I'll give you a hint, it is Marvel's favorite fallback for anything related to dark sorcery. If it is evil or magical in any capacity, there's like a 95% chance that it is tied back to this thing.
Do you know, Serby? Because I can't really think of anything.
I think I do, but I can't remember the name of the stupid book. I'm blanking on it.
I see. Well, I guess we'll get the answer.
Got your guesses in? All right, 3, 2, 1. The Darkhold. It was in the Darkhold. It's
That's
always
it.
the Darkhold.
Okay, the Darkhold.
For anyone who's very new to Marvel and has not heard of the Darkhold, it's basically
Me.
Marvel's version of the Necronomicon and their favorite plot device that they can use to pull any kind of dark magic out of their ass. So Thulsa's cult has the Darkhold, they've figured out the vampirism spell, now all they need is someone to test it on, and Varney volunteers.
Is it just me, or does that look like the Resident Evil 6 logo, just backwards? That looks like the font for 6 that they use there.
It's exactly like the Resident Evil 6 logo.
I don't know why that popped into my head. I've only seen that in passing, but for whatever reason, that's immediately what my brain went to. Man, human brains work weirdly. Work in strange ways.
As he was already injured and probably didn't have that much longer to live regardless. So they kill him, bring him back, and it is a rousing success. Varney has been transformed into the first vampire and is now ridiculously powerful. I'm not going to go through an exhaustive list of all his abilities because there's a lot of them, but they're basically just every power that you've ever associated with vampirism. And then, in a twist that absolutely everybody involved should have seen coming, the sorcerers tried to control Varney and deploy him against Valencia, but Varney quickly realized that he was now the most powerful person around and figured that, maybe he should be in charge, actually.
Why should I listen to you?
Not only does he take over everything, he converts the rest of the cult as well, establishing the vampire race with himself at the helm. The next very long period of time is kind of a gray area as to what vampires were doing, mostly just because of how old it is. Marvel's pre-cataclysmic Atlantis existed around 50,000 BC. To any historians in the audience, I'm sorry, I know that sentence just kind of made you sad. One thing that we do know happened roughly during this period was the beginning of a feud between Varney and Khonshu as well as their followers. We're going to return to Moon Knight versus vampires in the modern day, but just know that the origin of that starts here. But with that said, we're going to do a massive time skip all the way to 1459 AD, which is where Dracula enters the picture. To be clear, Varney and the Vampires, which I'm realizing as I say it out loud would make a really cool band name, do exist in between these periods, and they're still doing stuff, but most of their interactions are just normal vampire lore that also happens to be canon to the Marvel Universe.
Okay, it's kind of stuck in my mind now, so I have to say it. Varney and the Vampires, for whatever reason, made me think of the Hex Girls, and I think they would perform well together. Just saying.
They do have a few encounters with notable Marvel characters during this period, but this is their time as folklore creatures, not really the superheroes versus...
Oh, Croatoan. I thought he said that I am Croatian. What?
What a twist!
What a twist! Let's give you what you need, huh?
This is vampires content that everyone is here for, so we're just going to move past it quickly. Vlad Dracula was born in 1431 as Transylvanian royalty. His early life is largely skimmed in Marvel, which does kind of make...
Wait, is that Captain Britain?
Where? Oh, yeah.
Are they getting beat up again?
It's the British Spider-Man. I forget his name.
Oh no! Well, we did see a comment under the Captain Britain lore video talking about how he's a part of the Captain Britain Corps as well as the Spider-Verse, the Spider Society, so like... Bro was working double time on this one. Poor dude. But I guess all Spider-Men are just hard workers and no reward.
Makes sense, but we know that he was a very violent ruler. The canon of his transformation is a little bit shaky because it has gone through some retcons over the years, but the current status is that Varney took notice of Dracula's tyrannical rule and saw potential in him as a successor.
Damn.
After all, Varney had been around for about 50,000 years at this point, and even though he was immortal and extremely powerful, he was aging, albeit very slowly, and the guy was getting real tired. To ensure his legacy, Varney gave Dracula visions of an upcoming battle, but those visions were intentionally wrong. Varney wanted Dracula to get injured so that he would need to seek medical assistance, which was something that Varney had set up. The woman that Dracula was taken to for healing was a vampire herself, and she was the one to convert him. This is where the canon does get kinda stupid for a bit. Remember that Varney is a Marvel creation, and Dracula is not, so Marvel was publishing Dracula stories long before Varney ever appeared, and then they kinda had to reconcile that weird contradiction. Originally, Dracula became Lord of the Vampires by slaying the previous Lord of the Vampires, a guy named Nimrod. But then they changed it so that Nimrod was a servant of Varney who had been temporarily empowered with Varney's abilities as a test for Dracula. And then when Dracula killed Nimrod, Varney showed up and was like, surprise, I'm the real guy, and you win. You basically beat me by proxy, so you get to be the Vampire Lord now. Varney willingly gives up his power to the tyrant and perishes in the process, leaving Vlad Dracula the new vampire lord. We are going to return to Varney.
Well, to be fair, being around for 50,000 years, yeah, it's probably not going to be such a great time, especially if you look that ugly and you don't have like a hot wife like Slayer does. So, yeah.
Damn. Are you calling Slayer ugly?
Wait, no, I'm not calling Slayer ugly. You're putting words into my mouth now. I'm saying bro is living life well, okay?
This video, I didn't spend all this time talking about him just to set up Dracula, but we have some other ground to cover before we get there. Part of that ground is a segment that I'm going to call, What is a Vampire Anyway? Which is a wild thing to have to cover at all, and definitely wild to do several minutes into the video, but worth talking about.
I'm actually not surprised considering how Marvel will probably try to expand on what a vampire means, and I don't know if there's any sort of like potential copyright or trying to make it their own unique thing so they can copyright it happening as well in the background.
I feel like too, you'll have one writer who will like sit down and be like, this is what a vampire is, and then someone else will be like, haha, what if I put a vampire here?
I was just thinking in terms of like how I forget what they're called. I think they're called like the Seraphon or something like that for Warhammer Fantasy. But they were basically just lizardmen. However, they were just direct copies of lizardmen from like D&D and stuff like that. So they tried to make it unique by adding a little twist to it and changing the name, but it's still literally the same thing.
When it comes to vampires, Marvel has taken a very similar approach to the way that they handle mythological gods, which is basically just that they're all real, don't worry about it. When you say vampire, at least in America, most people think of one typical archetype of thing. Okay, two typical archetypes of thing, but whatever.
No, please, no.
But cultures all over the world have their own creatures which are very vampire-like. Yes, you have your Draculas and your Count Orlocks.
Aren't she like Chinese vampires, kind of?
Kind of, from my understanding. That said, I don't know really too much about Chinese mythology and horror like that.
Me either, honestly.
I'm trying to think of like a parallel to what a vampire would be in Thai like horror and mythology. I can't really come up with one. But, I mean, one that I think is pretty gnarly is like a Gasu, which is basically like a witch who at night will detach her head from her body, and then it'll just be like the floating spine and the stomach attached to it. So she'll go floating around in the woods and looking for like newborn babies to eat.
There's a similar yokai in Japan called Nukokabe, I think. Something along those lines. That, yeah, does the same. They'll detach their head and it'll float around and do its thing.
Yeah, that's kind of odd because generally here in Southeast Asia, we have something similar, regardless of like what country you're in, that is described in the same way. It's depicted a little bit differently, but it's kind of that. So I wonder, like, where did that begin? You know, where did that start? Where did people start making stories from that? Or was there actually a thing out there? Oh, you never know.
But you also have things like the Jiangshi from Chinese
occultism,
or the Vatala from Hinduism.
A second too early.
Bro, pre-watched? Survey, how could you do this?
All of these other versions also exist and still can be referred to under the umbrella term of vampirism. They are all said to be descendants of Varney's original cult in one way or another, because that group was so many thousands of years old that they spread out and evolved.
Yeah, considering how long they've been around and how much time has passed, I can certainly see a bunch of mutations creating their own unique thing for every single region. And because we have the hand-wavy, like, oh, they all just exist at the same time, don't worry about it sort of thing. Yeah, we can just have fun.
It's impressive that they bred out the ugly, because usually the ugly gets bred in. But
I'm not a geneticist, but I'm sure at some point, you know, things are going to change. Depending on, obviously, you know, how... Well, I don't really know how vampirism even works yet, so we're going to see.
The general rule is that if they drink blood, they are probably considered a vampire. This is a vampire, this is a vampire, this is a vampire, this is not a vampire. Yeah,
what?
Keyword was probably. We do have to talk about Morbius. Now, maybe
Morbius isn't a vampire? I was always under the impression that he was. No, wait.
Not.
No, wait. We did mention Morbius a few times in other videos, and I think Sir Super kind of glossed over it that like he's not actually a vampire, but we'll get to that in a separate video or something along those lines. I guess we'll learn about it here.
I've never read Morbius, but I think I knew he wasn't actually a vampire, but I also wouldn't have told you the definition of vampire in Marvel, so...
His entire design screams vampire. What is he going to be if he's not a vampire?
I'm selling Morbius a little short here.
Vampire light.
He's actually a fine character. It's just that the god-awful movie gave him a bad reputation. He is not a vampire, though. That is objectively true, and I don't even really want to include him in this video. I just know that if I don't, people are gonna ask. Michael Morbius transformed himself into a vampire-like entity using a treatment he devised that heavily involved bats. If anything, he's actually a lot closer to Spider-Man than he is to vampires in the mystical sense.
So what you're saying is that he's some sort of Batman.
Batman. Yes. Precisely.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Or I suppose in another way, it's like Miguel O'Hara being Spider-Man, but not really like that. But still technically Spider-Man.
Yeah, got his powers completely different than most of the other Spider-Man.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I understand now. No wonder why he gives off such like vampire traits, but not actually a vampire.
He was never bitten by a vampire, he does not have the traditional vampire weaknesses, and he should not be considered a magical character. Except for the times when he is, but usually this can be attributed to either A, writer trying to make a major status quo change to the character which did not last, or B, a writer just misunderstanding how Morbius worked. And now that I have addressed him, I'm not going to bring up Morbius for the rest of this video. Though I will tell you that It's Morbin Time is actually canon in the comics. It's only been said once, and Morbius himself was not a fan of it, but it did happen. But while
let me read that again. So, I will work with you as long as our goals align. Yes, it's Morbin time! I have no idea what that is, but if you ever utter that phrase again, I will dismember you. Okay, fair enough. Still very excited to have you on the project, sir. Oh my goodness.
Perfect.
And what kind of writer saw that interaction and was like, yeah, Morbius is gonna say it's Morbin time in the script? What the hell?
I love it.
Not reading the source material? No, couldn't possibly be.
It had been said once, and Morbius himself was not a fan of it, but it did happen. But while we're on the topic of what counts as a vampire and what doesn't, there's another character who's a lot more important to this topic as a whole, Blade. Let's talk about him. I'm sure the majority of people watching this video are...
Ooh, I don't know if any of you guys watching saw my reaction to Blade's reveal from Marvel Rivals. People were like, well, Zero, you're playing through Devil May Cry right now. You're going to understand what inspired Blade's moves. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it now. It's the Aura Farmer, the original Aura Farmer.
Oh, yeah.
Already kind of familiar with the origin of Blade, but I'll go through it really quickly again, both for the people who don't know, and also because there's a really important fact that I do want to mention in it. Blade's real name is Eric Brooks, and he is not a vampire in the traditional sense. He is instead a thing called a Dhampir, or to use more of a slang term, a Daywalker, which I will keep saying because it sounds cooler. As a Daywalker, Blade is essentially a half-vampire. The reason I say essentially there is that it's not a simple situation like one parent being a vampire and the other being a human. It's a...
Okay. If I recall from at least the movies, because I have not read any of the comics, wasn't his mother pregnant and then she got bit by a vampire? And so it sort of transferred to him?
So I don't know.
Something along those lines. We'll see if the comics differ. Or if my memory's just faulty.
A lot weirder than that. Before Blade was born, his mother had some complications with her pregnancy and sought out the assistance of a doctor. This doctor was a guy named Deacon Frost, and he was secretly a vampire. Deegan then bit Blade's mom and drained her blood while young Eric was being born, and the weirdness of this whole situation led to Blade getting some of the vampire traits, but not all of them. Basically all the good ones and none of the bad ones. Blade has all the powers of a vampire, but none of the weaknesses. He is really
got all the bad ones and none of the good ones.
Yeah. Oh, and look at that. Is that Ghost Rider? Yeah, we're just chilling.
Probably.
Just a superior vampire by all accounts, and this is not just a weird plot hole, it is a plot point that we will return to. Thanks to the insanity of this whole situation, Blade was orphaned literally immediately after being born. His father was technically around, but not really important, either in-universe or out-of-universe. His name is Lucas Cross, and he only appeared in one Blade series ever back in 2007. He doesn't really get referenced outside of that, so I'm not going to devote time to him. Blade spent his childhood on the street before eventually running into a vampire slayer named Jamal Afari, but rather than killing the young boy, when Afari learned about the situation, he took Blade in as an apprentice. Now, remember how I said a couple minutes ago that there was an important thing I wanted to mention about Blade's origin? This is something that almost all Blade media entirely forgets, and I really want it to be addressed at some point. All this happens in London. Blade is British.
Wait, what?
And I don't mean he was born.
Damn.
What?
I didn't know that.
I have... What? He's always been so incredibly American in the movies, at least, and in all depictions I felt like he was straight up American. It's like, what? Huh?
I was not aware of that. Yeah, I don't know.
Huh. Okay, well, I guess the more you know.
Born there and then moved somewhere else. Blade was born in London in 1929. Also, yes, he's that old. Vampire immortality, he's got it too. Then he spent his childhood on the streets of London. He should have a British accent. He absolutely should. And this
100%.
never, ever, ever happens. Now, this is no hate to the interpretations of Blade that we've gotten. Wesley Snipes was obviously an iconic version of the character. Mahershala Ali's Blade is basically a myth at this point, but regardless, I desperately want to see British Blade somehow.
Actually, wasn't he the voice for Blade in the Marvel Zombies movie? Or, I guess, series?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, damn, you really should. It's pretty good,
It looks cool, yeah.
We've technically heard his MCU voice already in an Eternals end scene, but like, let's not pretend the MCU follows up on their end scenes like they used to. It could change, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, Wesley Snipes, Blade movies, awesome. I say the sequels, not too great. People will always correct me. The second one's actually great. I mean, the third one, like, I think we can all objectively agree that it was just not as good as like the first one. And you gotta respect the Blade movies, though, because the Blade movies, I think, were basically the start of superhero movies actually being popular.
There were some of the first ones, yeah.
Yeah, and Marvel became
I don't
Marvel.
know chronologically which ones actually came out first, but yeah, it's definitely among the first.
Or I guess, like, the MCU exists nowadays thanks to those movies, so yeah, neat. Cool.
Those movies, the original Ghost Rider did a lot. The original Hulk movie.
Yeah, that one. Man, that was a very different Hulk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Marvel, please make MCU Blade British, if that movie ever happens, which I kind of doubt. Now, at this point in the video, I've established Varney, I've established Dracula, and I've established Blade. There is one more vampire-related thing that I need to talk about, then we can get back to vampire history, and I can bring all these points together, because I have been building to something with this. See, the spell that originally created vampirism was not the only vampire-related spell contained within the Darkhold. It also held something called the Montesi formula. As far as I can tell, the Montesi formula is another Marvel original concept, and it can best be described as a vampire kill switch. I know the name Montesi formula makes it sound like a potion or something like that, but it is a magical spell that has a singular purpose, that being an instantaneous kill on any vampire. Even in the hands of a weaker sorcerer, the Montesi formula can and has one-shot Dracula, though it does not prevent him from being later resurrected by other means.
So basically, you type /kill in the console, but then Dracula just respawns elsewhere. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Why do we have this kill switch, though? I guess even the people who created the Darkhold knew that, you know, this would be bad news bears, so this would be at a kill switch. Which probably smart on them.
The Darkhold is kind of Deus Ex Machina equivalent of like whatever we need, the Darkhold has it.
Well, Star Superhero did say that, yeah, it was basically along those lines. Do we have any origins for the Darkhold, or is that just like shrouded in mystery? Gone.
I'm sure
through
there is,
time?
but I don't know it.
Gotcha.
It's when powerful sorcerers get their hands on the Montesi formula that things get really crazy. Pump enough energy into the spell and it can eradicate all vampires. End of sentence. Granted, this would be extremely difficult to pull off, as it would take a level of resources comparable to the Sorcerer Supreme using the original Darkhold, but it is a factor in vampiric life and their villainous plots. Just remember that for now. Like I said a minute ago, all these isolated little things that I'm talking about are going to fit into a larger puzzle. And we can start putting that puzzle together by going back to vampire history and returning to Dracula. Dracula has appeared in over 280 Marvel comics, but not in the way that you might expect. A villain, yes, but not an antagonist, rather the protagonist of his own self-titled series. Marvel's Tomb of Dracula comics ran for a whopping 70 issues back in the 1970s and have been rebooted a few times, putting a solid third of Dracula's appearance in this book in one way or another. These books are not unconnected horror stories either, they are part of the Marvel Universe. Doctor Strange is in them, Werewolf by Night is in them, Blade made his first appearance in the Tomb of Dracula series.
That was Blade?
That's a look.
Yeah, I guess times were different back then. Fair enough.
I was gonna say you can see the arrows there.
100%. We also had like a bunch of throwing knives, I guess. I mean, Blade would probably use them, but it's not what I think of when I think of his iconic stuff.
No.
It
Does he have green sunglasses?
Yeah, the green pants and green sunglasses to match. With a red shirt and a yellow belt.
I like it.
It is kind of surprising that Dracula has his like own comic book. I always thought he'd just be like the looming antagonist within the series or something like that.
I knew he had his own comics, but I didn't know that they were that long. I kind of just figured it was like a mini series or something.
Oh yeah, well, like a little mini series to explain his origins or something like that, so that he could appear in other stuff. That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, bro's a major character.
He wasn't doing crossovers with the Avengers or anything like that. Dracula stayed pretty firmly in the supernatural side of Marvel and on the fringes of it at that, but the Venn diagram has overlap. He was part of the world. When the popularity of this sort of horror comic started to die down, Marvel largely relegated Dracula and vampires in general to their own spaces and also a sort of gimmick villainy. Vampires would still appear in Blade comics, of course. Blade stayed fairly popular, especially in the 90s, and other supernatural characters like Ghost Rider and team-ups of the Midnight Suns would deal with vampires, but largely they were published less. However, this sort of gimmick handling meant that we got to see them in new situations, and some very weird ones at that. From the 2000s into the early 2010s especially, vampires were handled... You know what? I actually think that me telling you how this was handled isn't the best way to do it. I think a better way would just be to show you the comic entitled Hulk vs. Dracula. This is just...
I see. Gotcha. We're just like the power scaler essentially now at this point. This is not a combo that I've heard of, not gonna lie. When I think of Hulk versus something, it's gotta be Wolverine. This is also the era when we see Dracula's design shift to the much more supervillainy red suit we have today. Gotcha. To make him look more menacing during these fights, I'd assume.
Found it how they were for several years. Vampires were a cool, fancy thing that they could throw into comics relatively easily to get eyes. Look, your favorite characters are fighting vampires. The X-Men are fighting vampires. Spider-Man's fighting vampires. Hulk is punching Dracula.
Became a vampire for a while. The last comic I read, he was still a vampire. I don't know if that's been resolved or not. It's been a bit since I read his comics.
Feels like we've been put in a very similar situation as the zombies, right? Where it's like, it's a popular genre, so we're throwing our superheroes into there, and we happen to have this history of characters that are part of that, so we'll just drag them in. I suppose that makes sense if they're not selling anymore, so at least we can reuse them.
They're, more like what we thought Dracula was originally, like a fun one-off kind of thing.
Basically, yeah.
As I'm sure you can guess, most of these appearances took the form of either a single arc of a larger storyline, a mini-series, or a digital comic, which is a standard thing now, but back in the early 2010s was a weird experimental realm. They never went away altogether, nowhere close to it. They appeared fairly often, probably because vampires are such a common trope that they're very easy to work with, but if you take a look at the complete list of Marvel comics that vampires have appeared in, which is weirdly easily accessible, it gives some good information. The full list is almost 900 issues, so I'm not going to take the time to show that, but right now you're looking through a scroll of the late 2010s, and if you pay attention, you'll note that you very rarely see the same comic series listed more than 2 or 3 times in a row. This list is in chronological order, which proves my point that vampires were kinda handled as a gimmick. They would show up as a quick thing for the superheroes to deal with, and then they would be gone. They would rarely ever be a big bad. This would change, though, in 2019. The shift happened in the pages of the Avengers comic by Jason Aaron, which I have mixed opinions on, to say the least. It started off really good, and then by the—
Wait, Jason Aaron, wasn't he the one who handled Ghost Rider and made all those changes too? I feel like the name is familiar.
It sounds familiar. Yeah, I'm not positive though. I could. My memory is not that good, Zero.
I do remember reading a bunch of comments, so I'm pretty sure it was Jason Aaron. We could be wrong, so you guys can correct us. But like a lot of people enjoyed his work. I think Sir Super even mentioned that they enjoyed his work on other things except what he was doing to Ghost Rider.
I feel like the consensus I saw was that he wrote fun, cool stuff, but the ramifications of it, most people were not fans of.
Yeah, I recall that, yeah.
I like the idea here, but I don't like what you have done to the character to get here.
Yeah. Ignoring a few things that were set up before in order to make things happen, and then the ramifications of that leading into other people having to have consequences, and yeah, it's just a whole bunch of stuff. Bro just wants to write cool stories and also wants them to be canon, so I think that kind of clashes a little bit.
The end it got. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I got to stick on topic. We're staying to vampires. I'm going to talk about vampires. A large part of this series focused on the Avengers as a global power. After all, the Avengers protect the entire world, and a lot of groups don't particularly like that. So a core conflict, at least before the series kinda lost the plot and went off the rails, was other groups making their own versions of the Avengers for specifically their territories. For example, the American government created a new state-sponsored version of the Squadron Supreme, which only protected America and didn't do anything else no matter how many lives were in danger, which, yeah, that's pretty on brand for us.
Sounds about right.
Some other world powers, which formed their own Avengers equivalents, were Russia, Atlantis, and Dracula. Notable world power Dracula.
What the hell? Wait, is that the Ghost Rider? Is that Robbie Reyes?
It looks like Robbie Reyes.
No! What have they done? Wait, is that bad in the front just giving a thumbs up? What? Just yeah, we got him, boys.
In this comic, Dracula kind of acknowledges the fall from grace which vampires had experienced over the last several decades and sets out to form his own vampire nation, sovereign and distinct from everywhere else. This began when he claimed territory around the ruins of Chernobyl because Dracula and his people could survive there without too much issue, which did admittedly make it a pretty perfect candidate. As for that Avengers equivalent, it was called the Legion of the Unliving, a name which has been used to describe a lot of different teams that have very little connection between them, but in this case, it's because they were vampires and they were undead. The roster for this team was wild, including such highlights as the Shadow Colonel, who was actually Dracula's son, but decked out in a suit of essentially power armor and armed with a minigun. Carpathian, who was technically a vampire, but for all intents and purposes was just a giant gargoyle. And Rat Bomber, who had an army of trained rats with grenades strapped to their backs. As if this character needed to be any weirder, they were actually specific vampire-killing sunlight grenades. The main purpose of the Legion of the Unliving was actually fighting vampire dissidents within Dracula's vampire nation, not fighting people like the Avengers, though they did do that. Now, unfortunately, I do have to ruin the fun for anyone who is excited about the Legion of the Unliving. They were not important at all. Like I said, Jason Aaron's Avengers really went off the rails, and this whole plotline never really went in the direction that a lot of people were wanting it to. But even though this group wasn't major, they did serve the purpose of re-establishing vampires as an active threat within the Marvel Universe, something that would be followed up not in the pages of a Blade book like you might expect, but in the pages of Moon Knight. I know a lot of you were waiting for this section of the video, but here's the thing that's going to surprise you. Moon Knight's history with vampires is actually incredibly short. The main reason that people associated Moon Knight and vampires for a while was
No, it's a meme. No. Yeah, what was the original? No, I shouldn't let these things get to me. After all, I'm as much a creature of the night as Russell is. Still, there was something about this place that set my nerves on edge. Oh, that's boring. Damn.
That's not nearly as fun.
Yeah. Where's my goddamn money, Dracula?
the whole Dracula owes me money thing, but that was a meme. That panel is not real. It has never appeared in a comic. It gets referenced sometimes in recent years, but that's just because the meme has gotten so big. Technically, from an in-universe perspective, Moon Knight and the Fists of Khonshu in general do have a history with vampires, but this is a retcon and a recent one. Basically, since the Moon Knight vs. Vampires arc that I'm about to start talking about was so popular with fans, Marvel just decided that that actually could be part of the history.
To be honest, the moon, vampires,
I just say, like, I see the connection. It makes sense. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Remember how I mentioned an ancient feud that Varney had with Khonshu towards the beginning of the video? It's thousands of years old in universe, but in real world time, it's like 3 months old. Gotta love comic books. Ultimately, from our perspective in this reality, Moon Knight and vampires are a very recent thing. Now, of course, Moon Knight appears in a lot of books, so I can't speak to every team-up and crossover and things like that. Maybe he's briefly fought vampires in one of those. But I can tell you that the first appearance of vampires in a Moon Knight self-titled series was in 2021. Moon Knight was never
Very
associated
recent.
with vampires in any official capacity before this. Again, I'm sure there's a Moon Knight and Blade crossover somewhere where it happens, but it's never been an iconic part of his character. Not only does Dracula not owe Moon Knight money, I'm pretty sure the two have never met. In the 2019 Moon Knight vampire arc, Dracula is not the main villain and actually never appears at all. Instead, the antagonists are a group of vampires known as the Structure. The Structure is essentially a vampire multi-level marketing scheme, led by a vampire known as the Tutor, who recruited people by turning them, and then in turn had them go recruit more people, turning them into vampires,
Brother.
who would
Vampires
recruit more
really
people
have
by
hard times if they turn to MLMs.
This is kind of funny though, because in World of Darkness, they're basically doing a similar thing, depending on the bloodline. Like there's a particular clan of vampires, I believe, who also do this, that, you know, you're forced into having to get a certain number of servants, and you get mind controlled by your master, who in turn is mind controlled by their master, and shit like that.
turning them into vampires, and on and on and on and on. Moon Knight took them down, actually gaining a vampiric ally named Reese in the process, and this was the arc that cemented his reputation as a vampire hunter, which a good chunk of the community already thought he had, despite there being no evidence to that point. And like, you know what? I will say this, it does kind of make sense for Moon Knight to be a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody for getting this wrong, because it makes more sense than him not being a vampire hunter, actually. After all, one of the main roles of the Moon Knight is to protect all of those who travel by night, and vampires hunt almost exclusively at night. Plus, Moon Knight has a long history of going up against supernatural enemies that for all intents and purposes would be otherwise out of his league, and he's kind of in his Ghostbusters era right now with the Midnight Mission. Also, brief sidebar about that. Yeah, the recent Moon Knight series is largely about him being essentially a superhero equivalent of a Ghostbuster. He has an office, and it is a sentient building
awesome,
possessed by an interdimensional parasite, which basically makes it like a TARDIS. He even has employees now, 2 of which are vampires. Reese,
That guy have an 8-ball head?
Does it only say yes when you ask it a question?
I hope so.
who I mentioned before, and an ex-Hydra agent nicknamed Soldier, who was also turned into a vampire by Reese to save his life. The Midnight Mission rules, honestly. Like, it is my favorite status quo for Moon Knight that we've had in so
Nice.
long. Him being a
That sounds
Ghostbuster
really
kicks
cool, actually.
ass,
I'm
and
gonna
I
have to
want
check
this to
that out.
stick around for years.
Well, we do have a Moon Knight specific video as well, so we could probably check that out to potentially learn more about this.
Yeah. We should do that. I honestly don't know much about Moon Knight, just the TV show, which was a lot of fun, but I know that's not his normal for the comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't know too much about comic Moon Knight, only against Marvel Rivals Moon Knight, which, I mean, canonically, you know, Bad Dracula does owe him money there, but yeah, it was just a meme. And memes are the DNA of the soul, after all.
Yeah, of
Ass,
course.
and I want this to stick around for years. Anyway, I'm getting distracted by my favorite superhero. Getting back to vampires, the Structure was actually only the beginning of what would be a much larger vampire invasion, culminating in the event known as Blood Hunt. See, the branch of the structure that Moon Knight took down was actually only one part of a global organization, and shortly after this, they led a worldwide uprising spearheaded by Blade. Yeah, Blade was in charge of a vampire uprising to subjugate humanity. I know that's weird, just hang tight, we'll get to that in a second. To achieve their final plan, members of the structure figured out a way to utilize dark force energy, which is like darkness magic from another dimension, to block out the sun the world over, allowing the vampires to operate without their primary weakness. This led to the Blood Hunt event, which was absolutely crazy. If you want superheroes versus vampires, this is the book for it, since that is quite literally all it was, and it didn't always go the way you might expect. Miles Morales got turned into a vampire.
Oh, well, there you go. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
And that's been like a lasting thing. It didn't get resolved at the end of the comic. He is still trying to fix that right now. This series also introduced a bunch of new vampires who kind of blow the already loose convention of vampire fully out of the
Those are some cool designs, though.
I was gonna
I like
say
this artist a lot. I don't know who the artist is. I should look it up because I like their art.
Yeah, those are some really awesome designs. Like, screw the definition of what a vampire is. If they suck blood, then it's fine. If we can get cool designs like this.
water. You remember how a while ago at this point I said that a good general rule for identifying vampires was that they drink blood? Yeah, I lied to you.
Damn. How could you do this to us? Also, I love
I feel so
how
betrayed.
the guy on the right, like, we just don't know what to call you. You're kind of unusual. And he's like, that.
These vampires can consume things like pain or magic or ghosts somehow, and in most cases that's not really explained, but honestly don't worry about it too much because they were one-off villains for this for the most part. They're just kind of cool vampire-like guys for superheroes to fight. It's comics, don't overthink it. Hey, future Sir Superhero popping in to say something extra here, which is why it might not flow perfectly with the rest of the video. Like, right before I was finished editing this video, I was informed that one of the vampires from Blood Hunt actually does show up in Marvel Rivals. It's just in the event tab, but
you're right.
I do remember seeing him. You're
remember.
Right, yeah. Actually.
Oh my god, he's there. Well, he lives on in Marvel Rivals. Oh yeah.
there is a picture of him there. This guy is named Bloodstorm 1, and he is a genetically modified clone of Dracula created by Hydra, which is all like the edgiest thing that I could possibly think of related to vampires. He actually got his first appearance in 1993, which makes him, I believe, the only member of this group to appear before Blood Hunt. And he's not like a major character in Rivals or anything, but this is neat, so it was definitely worth cutting in and mentioning.
Yeah.
This event also featured the return of a Dracula self-titled series, with him as a pseudo-protagonist again, alongside a hero called Bloodline, the daughter of Blade. Yes, Blade has a daughter. She doesn't have too much lore yet because she's a relatively new character, first appearing in 2022, but she seems to have the same vampiric abilities as her father. This is skipping forward a little bit from Blood Hunt, but if you're curious where Bloodline is now, she is part of the ongoing Avengers Academy series, which means that she is actively being trained as a superhero, so hopefully we'll get to see more of her soon.
Okay.
Anyway, why...
Wait, was that Devil Dine on the back?
Sir Superhero. I was gonna say, that's what I was just saying. I wonder if Sir Superhero's done a video on Moon Girl and Devil Dino, because that would be fun.
Yeah, it would. I love, like, knockoff Captain America over here on the front, though. Is that supposed to be Juggernaut on the left? I think his name was. You can see their inspirations.
I read a little bit of this Avengers Academy, but not too much, so I don't know.
being trained as
But
a
they're
superhero,
all,
so hopefully we'll get to see
like,
more.
kids.
Yeah, I could
So I
have
don't
guessed.
think it's like the actual Juggernaut. It'd probably be like his son or something. I don't know.
Something like that, or somebody with similar powers, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, why would the daughter of Blade and Dracula team up in the first place, especially to fight Blade himself? Well, now I get to reveal my master plan and start
Blade
putting all these puzzle pieces together. It turns out that Blade had been possessed by Varney.
Oh,
yeah,
shit.
Varney was back in a big way, and after such a long time, too. Not just a long time in-universe, his previous comics appearance was in 1994.
Going more bat-like with him is pretty cool, though. I actually like that a lot more than
I
his original
love the
look.
design way more than the little, like, rounded, ugly dude just sitting in a pile of goop.
The funny little,
This is way more
Gremlin man.
menacing, and I think makes a lot more sense for, like, the first vampire to be more more like this. At least I would imagine it to be more like this.
Different, though. Didn't he have a Y before?
No, it was spelled like this. The one that you're thinking of is how Sir Superhero wrote the pronunciation. That he was potentially pronouncing it Varney or Varnai. He doesn't know. He's heard both.
Yeah.
So they really did a deep cut returning him to the spotlight. How exactly he was able to do that, we don't really know. It's never been officially confirmed, or more accurately, it's been officially confirmed twice in ways that kind of contradict each other. Either way, Varney's spirit took control of Blade's body, and even though we don't know how he did it, we know why. Varney was impressed by Blade, believing him to be a prophesized future evolution of vampirism because, again, Blade has all of their strengths and none of their weaknesses.
Yeah.
With vampires running rampant thanks to the eternal darkness and Blade as a near-perfect new host, Varney begins a ritual to unite himself with the dark force energy that is blocking out the sun, essentially locking in everything that had happened at that point and making the darkness permanent. Why was Dracula not on the side of this, you might wonder? Well, he was still working on his own vampire nation, and that was going decently well. He saw this big play by Varney as something that would put his operations at risk, so he fought against it. During all of this, Doctor Strange and
bad press, man.
I can't blame the guy. Bro was trying his best to actually make something, and then Varney comes out of nowhere to do this to the world? Nuh-uh, sir.
Wife Clea are trying to figure out a way to enact the Montesi formula, but remember, that takes a lot of power, the Sorcerer Supreme and the Darkhold, and while Strange is the Sorcerer Supreme, the Darkhold isn't super accessible at this point in canon. The way that this eventually gets solved is set up for a really big event that's actually ongoing right now and is maybe one of the funniest things to happen in comics in recent years, at least in my opinion. Strange needs more power, so he goes to Dr. Doom. And Doom basically says, yeah, I've been working on how to fix this the entire time. I was just waiting for you to come to me. I have everything already worked out. I just need a little bit of a power boost to get this all rolling, so...
You know, okay, yeah, that just sounds like Doom. Also, he probably has an ulterior motive to all this in order to rule the world.
Yeah,
so, yeah. Oh, I must be the Sorcerer Supreme. Oh, there you go. Oh, of course,
it's not the first time Doom has pulled something like this.
Man, he's such a fun guy. Love him.
Give me the title of Sorcerer Supreme and I will fix this. Kind of desperate, Stephen agrees to this on the singular condition that Doom will save the world and then give everything back to him. So the deal happens, Doom takes the power and therefore resources.
Comic also implies that Doom's plotting was behind this entire blood hunting for this purpose, but I don't think that's confirmed. He would use any opportunity to gain a leg up on everybody in the entire universe if he could.
Forces of the Sorcerer Supreme, uses it to do his spell, and yeah, this works, clearing the darkness from the sky. Meanwhile, back in New York City, Moon Knight was helping the Avengers fight off the vampires with an army of undead Moon Knights. Moon Knight had just been resurrected himself, actually, but that happens so frequently in Moon Knight books that I am absolutely...
I feel like that's a common occurrence.
Is that also another part of the reason why he fights so recklessly? Because he can just come back?
I feel like there's a handful of reasons, but yeah, I'm sure that's among them.
I mean, he's also kind of crazy, so that's probably a part of it.
To mention it so casually in this video. And then Varney gets gravely injured by Miles Morales, who was able to damage him by weird technical loophole of him being a vampire now and therefore able to get around the vampiric resistances. So everything is fixed, hooray. That's not the funny part though. The funny part is what happens after this, because Strange goes to Doom and says, all right, you did it, good job, now give me the Sorcerer Supreme title back. And Doom says, no, the deal was that I saved the world. And I have so much more to do. and then he just leaves, and Doom is Sorcerer Supreme.
Doom does nothing halfway. I only go all out, baby. What a legend. I love this man. Oh, I can't wait to play him in Marvel Tokon. Honestly, hopefully before then we can get to like playing Marvel vs. Capcom. We've been planning that for a very long time. Just haven't had the time to.
Yeah.
Ugh. So many projects going on, man.
Now, like, come on, Steven, buddy. You really relied on a deal that is fully dependent on Dr. Doom's interpretation of the term save the world? You didn't expect him to go off the rails with this? He has a lot that he has to get done, and the currently ongoing event is called One World Under Doom, because yeah, Dr. Doom...
One World Under Doom. As it should be. Why is this man is so pivotal? Every single time the Marvel Universe needs somebody to like be there at the top, to be that one dude on the top, it's Doom. Because this happened in Secret Wars too. So like, is another multiversal collapse happening? Oh man,
Doom is that guy.
There's always that one constant, and it will always be Doom.
With the power of the Sorcerer Supreme, absolutely just takes over everything. How exactly does this arc end? I don't know. As I said, this is the current status quo. We will have to see how it wraps up and even when that will be.
I don't remember.
What the hell? YouTube, no!
What?
YouTube keeps making things worse. Now you can't scroll down into the comments. You just see suggested videos. 10 months ago, yeah.
I'm sure this run is finished by now.
Probably.
I don't know.
I don't know how long this is going to continue for. Fortunately, this video is about vampires, so I don't actually have to talk about that. Speaking of new status quos, though, there is one big point that I do have to hit about vampires, that being that in the aftermath of Bloodhunt, they are no longer weak to sunlight. Yeah, you heard that right, it's an absolutely wild shift, but the destruction of Varnai removed the vampire's weakness to sunlight altogether. They still have their other weaknesses, but they can now operate in daylight with impunity.
So, are you telling me that Varnai was holding back everybody from enjoying the sun? Because bro just existed? Bruh.
Damn.
I suppose they needed some sort of way for Miles to be able to still go around and do his thing. Like, imagine he could only go outside with his parents at night.
Only superhero at night.
Yeah.
It's a good thing because a whole bunch of innocent people did get turned during the course of Bloodhunt. Again, the ramifications of this have not been fully explored because Bloodhunt is recent. The last issue of it came out in July of last year, so several months ago, and there has been an ongoing Vampire Hunter series happening since then, but the long-term effects, who knows? I don't think we're going to see too many vampire-centric stories out of Marvel coming in the next few months to next few years, mostly because Bloodhunt was such a big thing. I doubt they're going to want to redo that so fast.
I'm going to assume probably going to be a spike during spooky season, unless we already have a new arc going on. If we do, let us know, but I wouldn't think so, because like a major event like this will probably come around only a couple of years. Every now and then.
But are vampires gone entirely? God no. They have always been a very integral part of Marvel history. There are even vampire characters that I haven't brought up at all in this video because they aren't really connected to vampire lore as a whole. For example, there's Baron Blood, a Captain America villain who I bet a lot of people have been waiting on me to mention. He fought in both World War I and World War II, but he is largely contained to the Captain America sphere of things. So when Dracula and the Structure are doing things, Baron Blood's not often a part of it. Why do I bring him up specifically at the end of the video? Well, there are two reasons. One, I do think he's a good example of vampires who are unrelated to their group as a whole, but two, I like to end these videos with a weird bonus fact, and oh boy, Baron Blood has a good one for vampires.
Okay.
This is Redwing, like Sam Wilson's Redwing. If you're only familiar with the MCU version of the character, no, Redwing has not always been a little robot drone, he has been a literal bird for the character's entire history. Yeah, Baron Blood bit Redwing once in an attempt to kill him, but the attempt did not work, and instead Redwing was transformed into a vampire. Sam Wilson has a sidekick vampire bird whom he is psychically linked to. Again, it's not like related to vampire lore as a whole that much, but there is absolutely no way that I could do a Marvel Vampires lore video and not bring up Baron Blood and Vampire Redwing at least once. But with that, you have been given a pretty solid crash course in at least the top notes of vampire stuff. Once again, they've been in like 900 issues of comics, so there is quite a bit, but if you want to know how they operate, you got a pretty good idea. And like I mentioned right in the intro segment of this video, with Marvel Rivals having the Empire of Eternal Night season, which you now know is clearly inspired by Bloodhunt, I don't think the vampires are going anywhere. Thank you, as always, to Ruben Perez for drawing the avatar that you've been watching talk at you for the last half hour. I always appreciate his work. He did a great job with this, so go check him out. If you're curious what this character is from, it is not just an avatar representing me, it is a character from a superhero universe of my own writing, which you can watch in my TTRPG show, The D and Dorks, also on YouTube. There's a lot of good stuff over there. We've been running the show for years, and a bunch of creators that you might recognize are regular cast members. If you want to watch the season where this character specifically appears, it is titled Power Play. I really want to have the last clip of this video be some kind of stupid vampire pun, but I can't think of any good ones, which kind of sucks, but oh well, I don't want to be negative about it, and it's not exactly a high-stakes situation anyway, so we'll just call it there.
He still had to hit you with it, with what he could. This dude. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, vampires a lot more interesting than I thought they would be, because I felt like they'd probably just be like the one-off thing, and they were relegated to that at a certain point in time. But it was cool to see their origins. And
I think
Blood
it's
Hunt
fun
as an
that
event was
Marvel
fun.
just kind of has written a lot of original stuff for this. Because I kind of figured, yeah, it would be very much just the like
The usual
standard
vampire Dracula
lore,
story.
but kind of Marvelified, right?
Yeah.
But there's some interesting concepts and things that they
Yeah.
have just kind of made up on their own.
They
And I'm here
actually
for it.
put in more effort than a lot of other series that just kind of like copy and paste,
Honestly,
you know?
True. Yeah.
Hey, props to them then. That's gonna do it for this video, my dudes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed, and we'll catch you in whatever we check out next. Later, dudes.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.